Hello, everyone. We're going to start now. My name is Anirudh, and I'm the co-chair of this year's Michigan India Conference. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I would also like to thank Mr. Shivakumar for graciously taking time out of his busy schedule to be here. This is his second time. So before we begin, I just wanted to run over some information. Your video and audio will be muted throughout the session. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. And the questions with the most upvotes will be the ones that will be asked in the Q&A session. Today's session will begin with an opening address that will be on for 10 minutes. Then the keynote presentation will be for 30 minutes. And then the Q&A session will be for 15 minutes after that. In addition to today's event, we have an event on the 26th, which is next Friday, with former US Ambassador Tim Romer on the topic of why a strong US-India relationship is vital for global security and prosperity. So please join us for that as well. I would now like to introduce Dr. Ravi Pense, who will be doing today's opening address. Dr. Pense is the Vice President for Information Technology and the Chief Information Officer here at the University of Michigan. He's also a professor at the College of Engineering. Dr. Pense has secured more than $21 million in external research grants and has developed and taught several courses in areas of computer architecture, cybersecurity, and networking. He has earned several teaching awards and published numerous scholarly articles that he's co-authored with his students. Dr. Pense has been instrumental in strengthening the ties between the university and India. He's always available for his students and is very supportive of initiatives like this conference because of his deep passion for the university and India. Dr. Pense, on behalf of the planning committee, we would like to thank you for doing today's opening address. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Anirudh, for that wonderful and really kind introduction. Kudos to you, Ashish, and all of the outstanding Wolverines who helped organize this amazing conference. On behalf of President Schlüssel and all of the executive officers of this university, let me extend a very, very warm welcome to all of you for the 12th Michigan India Conference, as I recall correctly. And before I introduce our incredible keynote speaker, with your permission, I wanted to take a moment to express my heartfelt sympathies for those who are grieving the recent attacks and murders of 8 individuals in Atlanta area, including 6 individuals of Asian descent and 7 women. I am appalled by what has happened, and I stand together with the university leadership in rejecting this hate, violence, and xenophobia that target our neighbors, colleagues, friends, and loved ones of Asian descent. I know we are a better people, a stronger community, a compassionate country, and a world that looks out for each other. Humanity and love for each other will always prevail over this kind of hate. Now, switching gears to our outstanding speaker today, Shivakumar, or Shiv as he's popularly known, is currently the Group Executive Vice President of Aditya Birla Group for Strategy and Business Development. He has held many leadership positions, including being the Chairman and CEO of PepsiCo for many years, as the Nokia CEO for India and later emerging markets for nearly a decade. He's a sought-after speaker, and you'll find out why in a few minutes with his amazing leadership experience, and is always willing to give back and share his wisdom, just like he's going to be doing today. Shiv writes and teaches regularly on innovation, leadership, followerships, business models, digitization across the leading business schools in the world. He has won numerous awards for leadership, including Distinguished Alumnus Awards from both IIT Kanpur and IIM Calcutta. Shiv is best-selling author of The Right Choice, a book on career dilemmas. Shiv is not all work. He enjoys sports, and he's an avid fan of Manchester United and Barcelona football teams. Loves tennis and follows John McEnroe and Roger Federer as well in tennis. And as he's been visiting Michigan, I know he's a great Wolverine fan as well. And as I think about this conference that brings Michigan and India together, as I think about the caliber of speakers like Shiv, I want to share with you this one Sanskrit phrase that I learned from my mother a long time ago. And it goes something like this: Anaho Badraha Kratavo Yantu Vishvataha. Anaho Badraha Kratavo Yantu Vishvataha. Translated, let noble thoughts come from all over the world, all corners of the world. And it's a great testament to this conference that we are having speakers from all over the world come and help us learn together. So it's my great honor to welcome Shiv back again to Michigan India Conference. And Shiv, over to you. Shiv, you are muted, so you need to unmute.
Thank you very much, Ravi. It's an absolute pleasure to do this for the Michigan India Conference. Thank you, Anirudh. Thank you, Sujata. Thank you, Sherry, for doing all the organizing. And please do convey my regards to Professor M.S. Krishnan. I think I remember discussing this with him a few years ago. I was supposed to come and speak last year around the same time at the Michigan India Conference. And the topic was the same, stability and change. And we've had a change of 1 year for me to do this subject. And I'm going to take about 25-30 minutes, and I'm going to give you my views based on my experience on stability and change. So next slide, please, Sherry. So here's the paradox of stability and change. Most human beings want stability, as change brings in unexpected outcomes. So in a way, it is the known devil is better than the unknown angel. And in my career, I've seen that people actually fear change. They don't fear the concept of change, but they fear the consequences of change. They're very scared as to what will change bring and where will they end up as a result of that change. That's what worries them. Next slide, please. As I thought about this topic, I recognize that there are areas where stability is a virtue, and there are places where stability can be seen as unchanging or stubborn. So stability has both components. It is a virtue in many cases, and it is not a virtue in some cases. So next slide, please, Sherry. So where is stability a virtue? Circumstances and conditions, when it's a virtue, is what I will describe to you over the next few slides. And there are many places where being stable is an absolute virtue. Next slide, please. The first place where people seek stability is values and value system. Every child who grows up in what we call the family values. He or she is taught what the family values are, and they're practiced in behaviors. So the child watches his parents, both mom and dad, and says, hey, this is what my family is about. And he tries to imitate them, and he knows what are the boundaries set by his parents. Then he sees the way they interact with their relatives, with authorities, with society, etc., and he imbibes those values. When we get into organizations, every organization has a stated list of values. And those values are practiced in the organization through the behaviors of senior employees. And hence, the junior employees then look to them and say, okay, these are the values of this company. These values are practiced, and hence we must do the same. Now, what are values? To me, a value is something that you would die to uphold. A value is something that you would die to uphold. So the value can be integrity, the value can be dependability, the value can be reliability, whatever it is at your level, but you'd rather die than give up on that value. Another way of thinking about it is a value is like a lighthouse. When you have a dark and stormy night and there's nobody around you to decide, that's what focuses you, and that's your true north, and that's what you will pursue. That's what I call sticking to values. So everybody expects us to be stable in our values, whether it is at individual level, whether it's a family level, or whether it is at the company level. Next slide, please. The other place where people value stability is in routine. Okay, and routine is actually very important. There's nothing wrong in having stability in routine. So what are typical things in routine where stability can come in? The way you manage time as a routine, the way you manage your sleep, the way you manage your exercise, the way you manage your diet. These are very simple things, but when you follow a routine, okay, then you have stability in that routine. That's what happens. Okay. Next slide, please. The other place where people expect stability is what we call stability in your word and deed. And that's why when we find that bosses do not, stick to their word or walk the talk or not talk the walk, then invariably we ask the boss's secretary, what's the mood of the boss today? Do I really need to see him today, or can I go and see him some other time? So stability in your word and deed is another thing which most people would expect. Next slide, please. If you're a corporation working anywhere in the world or in any state, even if you take America, if you're a state or the federal government or whatever it is, you'd expect stability in rules, procedures, policies for a period of time, because you make capital investments and are running into millions of dollars or billions of dollars. Next slide, please. The other place where stability is valued a lot, and I cannot underscore the importance of this, please, which is stability in family. There are enough studies across the world which show that children who grow up in safe, stable families turn out much better emotionally, they turn out much better economically, they turn out much better educationally. Okay, economic, education, as well as emotional. And children who live either in one parent or divorced state of family, or a troubled family, or absolutely no family, rarely end up really stable. So stability in family is absolutely crucial if we want to build the next generation and the generation after that for people to do well. So this is something of great value, to have stability in family. Next slide, please. Political stability in a country is also very important. So if you look at political stability, there is a measure of political stability. It goes between -2.5 to +2.5. And the last data collected was the year 2019. Overall political stability of 200 countries was at -0.05. There were only 98 countries which had positive political stability. And what is the best way to look at political stability is to answer for you what is political instability. Political instability is the collapse of governments, either because they are not popular, or there's intense fight within the parties in that country, or there is an act of terrorism or some such thing which creates instability. Okay, so political stability in any country is absolutely important for its citizens to feel safe and secure. Next slide, please. Stability in earnings is very, very important. And we've seen that this year has been a huge burst of stimulus, and I will talk about that later on. Many people have given up a lot of their income this year. That income drop could be to the level of 10%, could be to the level of 20%. Earnings have been seriously challenged. Let's look at debt, the opposite of earnings. If you look at debt, the global debt right now is at $281 trillion. And in the last 1 year, we've added 24 trillion in debt. To give you a sense, in the last decade, we added 88 trillion. So nearly a third of that has been added in the last 12 months. Everybody is into stimulus mode, and they've borrowed heavily in order to fund this. People want stability in earnings because then they have to think about how they manage their kids' education, how they manage their mortgages, How do they manage their own current lifestyle? That's why people want stability in earnings. Next slide, please. Now, the second part of it, we come to change. Here's the funny part about change. Most people get change intellectually. Everybody agrees that change is needed. But individuals go through what I call incremental change. They don't really change to the fullest degree that is needed for them to be successful in the future. So individuals go through incremental change. Organizations go through a degree of better change. Okay. Society or the external world goes through the maximum change. Organizations go through the change not because their individuals are changing, but because the customers force them to change, the external conditions force them to change. So I submit to you as I start my change section that most people get change intellectually, but implement it incrementally. Next slide, please. So let's look at 2020. What have we seen in 2020? Thanks to COVID, we've seen a number of changes happening out there. Social distancing was the first big one. Okay, let's look at the kind of changes we've seen. The way we work has changed. Okay, the way we look at police, and I think police laws and legislation, and Ravi was talking about that. I think that has changed significantly. The attitude towards police has changed dramatically. I think the role of governments has changed. Thanks to the COVID pandemic, we've seen more and more governments step up and take much more control of the agenda of what was generally a civil society agenda. That has changed. I think we watched more movies at home than ever before. I think we watched sports, and sports was conducted across the world without any spectators. One could never imagine that in the past. Okay, and I think there has been very clearly an exit of Britain from the European Union, and then we also see changes in what's happened with the royal family. However, not all change is bad. We've seen some good changes too, which I would fail if I didn't point out in terms of 2020. For example, the development of the vaccine has been a phenomenal change in terms of time zones. A vaccine earlier took a decade. This vaccine has taken under 12 months. That's absolutely phenomenal. I think carbon emission has been at its lowest in possibly a decade or more. That's a very positive sign. Electric vehicles growth has been fantastic. That's a positive sign for the world later on. Universal basic income has become a fact. Stockton in California is experimenting with it. Finland is experimenting with it. Kenya is experimenting with it. So we are seeing, shades of universal basic income being implemented in many places. That's been a positive. Okay, I think the whole Black Lives Matter and the whole concept of racism and the fight against racism has been a very positive signal in my book coming out of 2020. Okay, another very big thing which all of us have taken for granted is the internet did not collapse with the billions and billions of webcasts and things like that. The internet did not collapse. The Teams work, the Zooms work, every FaceTime work, every single thing worked. And I think finally, e-commerce took off. So those are the positives in my book of 2020, and those were the challenges of 2020 as I saw it. Next slide, please. I mentioned that people stick to a routine and they're happy with the routine. Most people don't like change because we are creatures of habit. And as we get older, we are loath to change even more. In fact, people above the age of 50 or 60 very rarely change their daily routine. So you bring in something, people will say, look, I really don't want to do it. So people like change very, very few times. They would not like to change their force of habit. Next slide, please. What are the benefits of change? It pushes us out of our comfort zone. It gets us to experience more. It makes us flexible and adaptable. But more important, it's fun. Let me give you a simple example. Whenever we want to try something new, we say, let's go and try a new restaurant. Let's try a new cuisine. Okay, let's go and watch a new movie. Why do we do that? Why do we say that? Because for us, it's fun. So change is always fun. We don't go to the same holiday spot every year. Why do we change our holiday spots? Because we want an element of fun. It's just not the same boring thing or the same old routine. So these are the benefits of change as I see it. Next slide, please. What are the pitfalls of change? Number one, change, if not managed well, is very costly. Number two, it's very, very stressful. Number three, it's destructive. If it does not add value, it's destructive. And finally, some relish it and many resist it. That's been my personal experience. And one of the inputs that I'd like to give all the people on this call is that a lot of leaders tend to use the following vocabulary in their speak. They say, we are a company in perpetual change. For us, change is a constant. Okay, we are a beta company, etc., etc. Trust me, those sound bites sound very, very good for a newspaper or for a television audience. But to your employees get very scared when they hear that word change. When they hear that you are in perpetual change, they say, oh my God, what do I need to go through now? When will I see stability? Whenever you say transformation, whenever you say change, you must always add to it, where is the light at the end of the tunnel? So all change must be, suffixed with light at the end of the tunnel. If you're not able to do that, people will be very, very scared. They'll be like rabbits in front of headline. Next slide, please. Let's look at companies who have not changed and the lessons from that. Okay, here are absolute pioneering companies. Blockbuster was a pioneer. Nokia was a pioneer. Okay, Enron was a pioneer. Yahoo was a pioneer. BlackBerry was a pioneer. Polaroid was a pioneer. Kodak was a pioneer. Each and every one of them. It was not that any of them was any less innovative. Each of these companies was on the most innovative companies list sometime or the other. So it's not that they didn't change. They changed a lot, but they didn't change at the right time, at the right course. In fact, the mobile phone industry is a great example. Leadership has changed hands 3 or 4 times in the last 20 years in the mobile phone industry, the volume leadership. So if you're not constantly thinking of the next wave and what needs to be done, you'll be left far behind. And the combined value that these companies have destroyed over a period of time is enormous. And that's what I'd really like you to think about, that many, many times companies don't change, not because they have a weak culture, because they have a strong culture which forces them not to change. And many times companies say, that's a passing fad. That's what Blockbuster said of Netflix. It'll go away. They'll allocate a little bit of resources. Let's put $1 million. Let's put $100,000 behind that experiment and see what happens. So the ability to pivot in the face of rapid change is not something that these companies really displayed. So that's the lesson I'd really like you to take out, that you need to pivot very quickly if you want to change. Next slide, please. What are the changes that I see in society as a result of 2020? I think the number of poor people has increased. The number of poor people before COVID was expected to be about 330 million in the world on a total base of 7.5 billion people. It is actually today 550 million people. So the poor have gone up by 200 million. India has contributed a lot to that. China has contributed a lot to that. Many parts of Africa have contributed to that. Second, unemployment is at an all-time high. Unemployment was at the peak of the pandemic close to 15%. In a normal year, unemployment is about 7%. If you take America as an example, it is at about 8.2 million people are currently unemployed. If you take the base of all employed people at 150 to 155, you're talking about 5 to 6% unemployment. I'm told by the end of this year, America will be a little below 5%. Women have tended to bear the brunt of this change. 17% of women have still not got back to the workforce as I speak with you. 6% of men haven't got back to the workforce. So COVID has impacted women employment far more than it's impacted men's employment. Next, we've seen, because of work from home and people staying at home, we've seen a lot more domestic violence in some situations, in some areas and some countries. That's not good at all. Okay, so this has brought about that. I think if you look at agriculture, agriculture has done very well in most parts of the world. You look at industry, industry has suffered. But the one which has suffered the most is services. And one of the big changes we have seen is the shift of services from contact services to what I call contactless services. How many of the services can consumers actually consume in a contactless manner? That's been the big shift in society as a result of this. And finally, drop in office rentals. There's just too much good office space right now. So people who own office buildings are going and telling prospective tenants, we will do the fit outs for you. We will do the furniture for you. Okay, we'll give you 6 months free rent, but please come and start occupying. Because globally, even if 20-30% of people work from home, it's a dramatic change. It's not small at all. And that will have a serious impact on the office buildings and next on the construction industry in the next 3-4 years. Next slide, please. Let's look at what's changed in business organizations. Number one, flexible working. Work from home, work from office, work from anywhere. I said this in April when I was talking at the NASSCOM seminar that WFH is not work from home. In the future, it will be women from home. You will see many more women working because there's such a talented lot across the world. And the concept of a gig employee and a woman being part of that is really going to take off. Last year, more people work from home than work from the office. 2 to 1. 2 to 1. Office employees work from home, and most people like it. And then in cities which are what I call stressed for time, the Bombays of this world, the New Yorks of this world, the Hong Kongs of this world, okay, where commute is 1 hour, 2 hours to get to work, etc., those people have benefited the most. And they will not want to go back to office in a hurry. They would like to work from home a lot more because if you're spending an hour or two getting to work, then working from home saves you 2-3 hours. That's been a dramatic change. The second thing is digital has become the mainstream business model. In many industries, it's become the business model. And in some industries, it's become either the number 2 or the number 3 business model. The third thing which has happened as a result of digital is what I call collectivism, horizontal collectivism. Thanks to work from anywhere or work from home, work has got distributed. When you're working in an office, you would walk across to somebody's room, get the work done, close it, ask the question, call everybody into a meeting, and somebody would integrate that. Today, because work has got distributed, somebody has to coordinate and close it. Somebody has to integrate it. So thanks to digital, thanks to webinars, etc., I see a far higher degree of what I call horizontal collectivism coming into organizations. The classic organization of today has been based on the vertical hierarchy of the armed forces and the church. I think with pandemic and digitization, we'll see much more horizontal movement. Agility of an organization comes when it's agile horizontally and not vertically. I think there's a premium on communication thanks to COVID in every organization. Every leader has had to step up and convey the key messages, be visible, and show empathy. And finally, all companies have had to rethink their cost structure. Okay, fixed costs have been brutally cut because the break-even point has significantly gone up. Capacities have been unutilized in many a sector. So organizations have had to rethink their complete ways of working. They've had to rethink their policies, and they've had to rethink their cost structure. This is what's happened in organizations. Next slide, please. Let's look at what's changed in the family. The first thing which has changed in family is concern about kids' education. Talk to anybody where kids are going to school in grade 8 or grade 9 or grade 10. Parents seriously worry whether the kids have lost a year of genuine learning. A lot of parents want their kids to go back to school. Why is that? When kids went to school, there was a routine they followed. Go back to stability I talked about, stability and routine. Kids going to school in the morning at 7:30 or 8 or 9 is the routine, which parents like. Kids coming back at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock from school is a routine. Kids doing their homework every evening between 7 and 9 is a routine. Kids having dinner and going to sleep by 10 o'clock is a routine so that they can get up next morning. That's completely changed. Many parents say that their kids have developed bad habits. Okay, they're binging on Netflix late in the night. They're eating all kinds of stuff right through the day. And even when their classes are on the web, they log in, they log out of the video and just keep sitting and chatting and doing something on their phone. So the routine of children has been broken and many parents are seriously concerned about it. The other thing families are concerned about is parents' health. Okay, every family which has aged parents, they've been really concerned. And people who have aged parents are not coming to work for the risk of carrying the virus and transmitting the virus to their parents. All families are concerned about debt. Across the board, people have not been able to repay their mortgages. In India, for example, the mortgage repayment has dropped by 200 basis points in the last 6 months or so. People are concerned about keeping jobs. If the family was a two-income household, now they're worried whether they'll be able to keep that, whether it will become a one-income household. If it's been a one-income household, they're worried whether it will go to a zero-income household. And almost everything has moved digital. Digital payments, digital education, digital health, every single thing has gone digital, and that's absolutely very, very big. Let me give you a sense of how big digital is. Let's look at online grocery. 26% of online grocery is in China, of the total grocery. In Britain, it's 11%. In USA, it's 6%. Let's look at total online sales as a percentage of total retail sales. 45% of China sales is online. In Britain, it's 30%. Okay, the world average is close to 16. USA is 12%. And France plus Germany plus Italy plus Spain is about 12%. The world has gone digital shopping very, very quickly. And one of the lessons we are learning about digital shopping is that it's no longer about product. It's one-to-one sales virtually. It is about product, it's about service, it's about education, it's about entertainment, all rolled into one. That's what digital shopping has become. Okay, and this is not going to go back. Once people have tasted the comfort of home shopping, they're going to take to it in a much bigger way. As a result of this, traditional industries like the movie industry could lose 700,000 jobs across the world. Okay, the theme park industry could lose a lot of jobs. Airlines are already losing a lot of jobs. Retail can lose a lot of jobs. Okay, that's what's happening as the world and the consumers have pivoted to digital. And finally, next slide, please. What's happening to the individual in this change process? Number one, the first thought process for individuals is, how do I recoup my lost income? There are some countries where individuals are taking personal loans and putting the money into the stock market, hoping that the stock market will stay hot and they'll make up the drop in income of 10 or 20% that they saw in the past 12 months. All individuals are worried about job security. Next thing individuals are worried about is their skill base. They recognize that digital is absolutely a must-have skill set right now. They can no longer afford to postpone it. They are searching around, they're shopping around to say, which course do I take? When do I take? And finally, thinking about job security, rethinking their skill base, they're asking, should I stay in my current company? Should I leave? And what kind of an industry should I join tomorrow with my new skill base? And what industry will be good for the future? Next slide, please. So in essence, at the end of about 22 slides and maybe 25 minutes or so, what do I see in the future? I want to leave behind 4 thoughts for you. Number one, next slide, please. Mental health. I think mental health is going to be a very big issue. Mental health data is not available anywhere. But if I look at July 20 data from America, 4 in 10 people have said that they've gone through anxiety or depression in the last 6-9 months. The data at the end of the year is actually 66%, according to CNN. So the first thing about mental health, and this number in America in 2019 was 10%. So there's a 4-fold jump in the issues of mental health. At an organization level, I believe mental health will replace work-life balance as the top issue. Organizations will need to provide for therapists, mental therapists, so that people can reach out to them in an anonymous way. I think society should not frown on people who say, look, I'm going through a mental challenge. And what are the signals of mental health? 36% of people are saying, I'm not eating well. I'm not sleeping well. 32% of the people are saying, you know what, I'm not eating well. And that number is actually higher amongst young people. The number of people who are saying I'm not sleeping well in the age band 16 to 24 is 51%. So the older generation, people beyond the age of 65, have the least challenge on mental health. People in the age group 16 to 24 have the highest. This is a serious issue that we need to grapple with, I think, for the next 2-3 years. And collectively, if all of us in society, all of us in organizations, all of us in educational institutions can rally and actually support people who go through this, I think it'll be fine. That's what I would say. Mental health will replace work-life balance as the #1 issue in every corporation. Next slide, please. I think every company will rewrite rules and policies with respect to 2021 and beyond. I think work rules will change, sabbatical rules will change. Every single rule that you can think of, which impacts a person and his relationship with the organization, will come under scrutiny. So I personally believe that it's a time for reflection. It's a time when we need to really put our employees first ahead of everything else, because without the health and the mental well-being of our employees, it's unlikely that we will succeed. Next slide, please. Last year in 2020, only one country grew, which was China, which grew at 2.3%. The world declined at about 3.5 to 3.75%. Every country will be gung-ho about its growth for 2021. Everybody will put in stimulus. So we are seeing a situation where interest rates are very low, stimulus is very high, unemployment is high. The US just signed a $1 trillion stimulus package. People are expecting that the $1.9 trillion stimulus package will lift the global GDP up by 1 percentage point, so 100 basis points. The world GDP is expected to grow about 5.5 percentage points over 2020 base this year. The global GDP is about $80 to $90 trillion in a good year. So that's the kind of number you're talking about. So American stimulus is going or is expected to deliver 100 basis points growth on the totality of the world GDP. That's because the good news or the feeling or the euphoria is expected to spread. Next slide, please. I believe, a lot of people have talked about rising nationalism, but I think when I look at this, I don't think there is a concept called pure nationalism at all. I think it will be like a federal, country. You will have pockets of nationalism and you will have many pockets of globalization. If you look at global trade typically is about $10 to $11 trillion, which is about 11 to 12% of the global GDP. Now, no country grows everything, no country manufactures everything, and no country consumes everything. That is just absolutely impossible. Okay, so we are dependent on each other, especially the top 10 economies of this world are dependent on each other for somebody to produce the minerals, for somebody to give us the raw material, for somebody to finish it, for somebody to transport it or ship it, and for somebody to consume it. So I personally think that we will see a combination of nationalism coexisting with globalization. I do not see it splintering completely into nationalism and what I would call trade blocks or regional trade blocks. Next slide, please. So in summary, it would have been wonderful for me to have done this session last year. The topic is the same. We're doing this a year later, but it's always been a privilege to do this for the Michigan India Conference. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Anirudh. Thank you, Sujata. Thank you, Sherry. And please do thank Professor Krishna. Stability is actually good, and we look for stability in a number of areas. We look for stability in values. We look for stability in routine. We look for stability in family. We look for stability in earnings. There are many, many good things for us to have stability around. Change, however, most people get change intellectually, but they implement it incrementally. Individuals are actually loath to change. They just don't want to change. Organizations change a little more because the customers force them to change. And society or the external environment changes the most. And you have to go through change. There are positive aspects of change. There are negative aspects of change. There have been a number of positive aspects of the change. Thanks to 2020, there have been some challenges as a result of changes in 2020. The impact of these changes on society, I've discussed, on the family, I've discussed, on the organization, I've discussed, and on employees or individuals, I've discussed that at length. All I can say is, I think we need to collectively work to ensure that issues like mental health are taken care. We take that seriously and we provide a safety net for people who go through that as a result of the change. I think all organizations will come in with new rules and policies, both in organizations and society. I think every country will drive for top growth, and people are putting in a lot of money behind stimulus in order to get top line growth and put more money into people's pockets so that they lift the mood of the country. And finally, my personal belief, I believe nationalism will coexist with globalization. It will not be one or the other. Next slide. So this is the book I just wrote on Jan 15th. It's called The Right Choice. It's about resolving 10 career dilemmas as you start from being what I call a management trainee in an organization and you move up to the role of a managing director or a CEO. This book is available on Amazon. Please do pick it up if you so wish to. I can promise you that it will definitely help you think differently about your career. So that's all I had to say. Ravi, all I had to say. Ane, thank you very much for inviting me here. I'm more than happy to take any questions that you have, and we have enough time for that. Thank you.
Shiv, thank you for very energetic and thought-provoking conversation around stability and change. We are grateful to you. And I just wanted to mention that Krishna is also in the meeting. So I wanted to make sure that you're aware.
Hi, MSK.
Krishna,
Wonderful
good to see you again
Thank
and welcome.
Thank you, MSK.
So obviously there are a lot of questions from our audiences, but I wanted to take this opportunity to ask you a question. As you talked about stability and change, you've been yourself at many different organizations at key leadership positions. And one of the other factors that plays a role is the culture of an organization. So can you talk about the relationship between the culture of an organization with stability and change?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Ravi. Thank you for asking that. What I find is that an inclusive organization actually enables change better. An inclusive organization is one where people listen to each other intently, people give time to each other, there is no silo mentality, people don't look through you in the corridor, people seek your opinion, people respond to your WhatsApp, people respond to your mail, people respond to your questions. That is an inclusive organization. Now, a lot of people talk of diversity first and not inclusion. And here's my submission to you. Diversity is a number or a fact or a ratio, whereas inclusion is very subjective. There is no measure for it. My submission to you is that an inclusive organization will be a diverse organization. However, a diversity organization will not be an inclusive organization. So organizations where people are willing to tell the truth and are encouraged to tell the truth to senior management is what I call an inclusive organization. And those organizations tend to change much better. So if you look at all the organizations which have failed for whatever set of reasons, you will actually notice that there is some degree of opacity in communication, opacity in the way meetings are run, opacity in the way people understand an issue. There are different versions of a truth in organizations which are not truly inclusive.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And Michigan, under the leadership of Dr. Rob Sellers and working as all of the leadership together, has a great emphasis on both diversity and inclusion. And Michigan has been a leader. So thank you for calling that out. We appreciate it. We have a lot of questions from the audience. So one of the ones deals with the concept of that you discussed, overall the remote work. And this particular member wants to find out that will the credibility of work and skills be lost due to remote work? I think what he's referring to is when you're completely remote, there is some organic learning that occurs when you're in person. And he's wondering if the credibility of work and skills be lost when you're in completely remote and virtual working environments related to how we're working and how future of work is changing based on what you talked about. So that organic learning potential, could it possibly lost when you're in all remote world?
all the research so far done, Ravi, and I know that it's only a year. Why are people happy with work from home? These are the following points they point out. Number one, fewer interruptions at work. Okay, very important. Second is they're able to focus their time very well. Okay, and they're able to get work done much faster in a much quieter time zone, much quieter frame of mind. That's the other thing that they talk about. The other thing they talk about is they're comfortable with the workspace around them because it's their home environment. Okay, they're very comfortable. Okay, and they feel that not being in office actually has one huge advantage, which none of us actually thought about it, which is they don't get sucked into office politics. And hence it does not drain their brain. These are the reasons why people like working from home as opposed to working from office.
I think that's great. I'm going to see if Dr. Krishnan has a question. MS, I'm going to go to you to see if you have a question before we take some audience questions as well.
I'm fine. Thank you. I think I have there's a lot of questions from the audience I see, but also we have some construction deck work going on. So there is this cutting machine working. So just bear with me. It's a background noise. But thank you very much, Shiv. Maybe it is connected to some other questions people have. You made the point about mental health. I think one trend that I've seen is the way I actually comprehend this is if you understand everything as a normal distribution, right? Whether it is wealth, whether it is knowledge or intelligence, the world is normally distributed, right? People are in every aspect of, but in some sense, the COVID is what it has done is it has almost put a wedge through this normal distribution, pushing through two tails on the two ends. What I mean by that is people who are better off, actually, life has actually become a little bit more better for them, okay? Whereas whether you take it in terms of, for example, I'll include myself, I'm able to teach, I'm able to do all the things that most of the things we used to do and in the comfort of my own home office, right? Whereas it's not true for others. Similarly, if you go to schools and kids who are mature, who are really fast in getting things and who are kind of able to manage the time, who are focused, they're able to get a lot of things done. They're able to take extra courses and things like that, right? That's what is going on now. Whereas on the other spectrum, on the left-hand side of the scale, they actually suffer a lot more. What do you see would be the impact of this, as we recover from this? I think it's an inequitable kind of, impact that is going on here, right? I think it'd be a long-term recovery for us from here.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, MSK. That's a great observation. What we've seen is that where people have access to resources, and in this case, the resources has been access to very good digital technology, access to an ecosystem, etc. Okay, then they've benefited immensely. They've actually done better. Okay, their quality of life has moved up significantly. On the other hand, people who have been traditionally disadvantaged, okay, high inequality, okay, colored people, okay, or less educated people, okay, they have been hit very hard. So you'll find this, as an outcome. Let me quote a number to you, which will come as a surprise. The average wage in America has gone up in the last 12 months, believe it or not. And you know why? Because the lower paying jobs have gone out of the market. So it's how you read the situation. So if you read the situation as America is earning higher, that's not true. Okay, this is exactly what's happened. You've taken out the base. And I think colored people, ethnic minorities, etc., have suffered a lot in this bargain. And I think society is doing a lot. And I think all the governments have recognized that they need to put in stimulus first. So they're doing that. I think they will need to actually handhold these underprivileged sections of society if they want to do better. So I personally believe, irrespective of how capitalist a country is, I think you'll see many shades of socialism in the way governments will work over the next 12 to 36 months.
Thanks, Shiv.
I think that's terrific, Shiv. One of the questions from the audience is talking in terms of, change can become a habit, but habit can become change. Change can become a habit, but habit can become change. Is it right? And if yes, why would it be so? They just want to compare a relationship with habit and change.
One place where I definitely see that is learning. Okay, change can become a habit and habit can become change is a very good way of representing learning, because The more you learn, the more you change your habits, and hence that becomes a habit, etc., etc. I think there are good habits and bad habits. And I think what, I don't know, somebody coined this expression, one of the management gurus, called super habit. What is a super habit or a repeatable habit? Something you are the master of. Maybe reading is a habit. Speed reading is a habit. Okay, talking is a habit. Exercise is a habit, the right amount of exercise, etc. So there are many good habits. The ability to run a good meeting is a habit. So there are many habits people practice diligently and get very good at. The key thing I would say is you need to forget some of the habits also. As you go through situations like this, as you go through your leadership journey, it's good to forget some habits and develop newer habits. Because if you are not reskilling yourself with newer habits, I think you'll almost certainly drown. And I think if there is one habit that you need to pick up, almost certainly, guys, two habits I would say. One is the ability to learn. Second is the ability to reach out and help people and ask for help. I think these habits are not ingrained in people, in organizations, but these become very important in today's time.
Thank you, Shiv. That's terrific. One of the questions that our audience member wants to know is, he's trying to draw a relationship between, when we gain experiences, we are exposed to immense opportunities, connection between experience and opportunities. Then he talks about the challenges of getting into IITs and IIMs of the world and the pressure that it puts on you. And he's wanting to know how to be ambitious while maintaining stability, because when we see potential opportunities, whatever we pursue does not seem enough.
Yeah, that's a very good question again. See, whatever you pursue, whether it is if you're a kid and you're pursuing a sport, be it football or soccer or hockey or cricket, that's one. Or you're pursuing studies, or you're pursuing a career. If it becomes an all-consuming affair, it's unlikely you'll enjoy it. Okay. I think you must follow your passion. You must know how good you are at it and how good you can be at it. You must be able to judge. Somebody with poor, ball coordination or poor ball sense is not going to make it to the top of the craft. You have to be clear about it, number one. Second is recognizing your own potential. You must know at what height you will fly. Let me give you the analogy of flights. Some flights fly at 60,000 feet, some at 50, some at 40, some at 20. The temperature at 60 outside is very different. The pressure in the cabin is very different. The temperature outside at 10,000 feet flight is very different, and the pressure cabin is very different. So you have to know what best suits you. Having a realistic view of what you can do, what you can achieve and cannot achieve, I think is absolutely critical. And when you chase something which is beyond you, it is beyond your capability, you will possibly get it if you have very good luck on your side. Otherwise, it's unlikely.
Well said. One of the questions from the audience member is, can you discuss some examples of successful career pivots?
I think there are many successful career pivots. Okay. The best example, which is seen as a very successful career pivot, let me give you a good example and a bad example, as detailed by the American media. Okay, since we are, speaking at the Michigan India Conference, I think most people will say that Lou Gerstner's pivoting from selling cookies and credit cards to running IBM was a very successful pivot, where he went from selling consumer products to a B2B organization and transformed it into a services organization. Equally, on the other hand, people will say that John Scully's pivot from selling soft drinks and chips in PepsiCo and moving to Apple was actually a very bad pivot. Today, he's written a book called Moonshots, etc., etc. But those are two examples I can give you of a successful pivot and an unsuccessful pivot. There are many traditional bureaucrats who made a successful pivot and gone into politics. I think the current External Affairs Minister of India, Jai Shankar, is a fantastic example. He was the ambassador of India to America, and today he's the External Affairs Minister and doing a great job. That's a very successful pivot. So there are many examples in many quarters. So those are what I would give you.
Great. I think Dr. Krishna has a question from the audience.
Yeah, I'm
Krishna,
just
go ahead.
I'm just kind of looking at the audience question. Amazing, what a very rich interaction there. In fact, I'm just in the interest of time. I thought there is a question about Shiv, based from your corporate experience. Which are some of the companies, examples of companies that have managed this crisis well?
I think many companies have managed this crisis well, I would say. I would definitely put, I think the tech companies have managed this crisis exceedingly well. I think one must give it to them. I think they're one of the first few people. I remember Google put it out way many months ago to say, till September 21, we don't see people coming back to office. That was a very bold statement, I thought. Okay. The other company, which I think managed it exceedingly well, is TCS in India. Okay. They said in the future, we believe that a large chunk of our workforce will work from home. And they did exceedingly well, and they gave fabulous, increments or salary jumps to their employees. Okay, so I think the other one is companies which recognize that people are going through some degree of strife. I think they also managed it pretty well. So those are the examples I give you. I think by and large, big tech did a very good job of managing this.
Thank you.
No, I think that's terrific. I'm getting indication from Anirudh that needs to be our last question. So I appreciate it, Shiv. Any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No, absolutely nothing. It's a pleasure to do this for you. Thank you, MSK. Thank you, Ravi. Thank you, Anirudh. I really wish I was on campus. I love your campus. It's a fabulous campus. And it's always a pleasure to do this for Michigan. I feel just as much a part of it.
No, we love having you on campus as well. And thank you again for taking time. We're very grateful for your support. Anirudh, any final comments for you?
No, that's just about it. I'd just like to thank you, Mr. Shivakumar, for the amazing presentation, and thank you, Dr. Pense and Dr. Krishnan, for helping out with the Q&A. And I'd like to thank all the attendees for tuning in. Just a reminder that we have another session next week on Friday with Ambassador Tim Romer on US-India relations. That's it for now. Depending on where you are, I hope you have a good evening or a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.